In the bitter winter of 1987, a yellow school bus carrying 12 children drove past its final stop and disappeared into nothingness. No screams, no distress signals, not even the faintest trace of tire marks on the frost-hardened road. It was as if the earth had swallowed them whole, leaving only silence in its wake. Nearly 4 decades later, in March 2024, a renovation project at a long-abandoned farmhouse near Harrow Creek, Pennsylvania, unearthed something that reignited a mystery buried by time. Eli Granger, a contractor working behind schedule and soaked in sweat, swung his hammer through what he believed was just another old drywall. But behind that decaying plaster, he didn't find plumbing or insulation. He found a hidden cavity, and inside, something red. It was a faded red backpack, the fabric aged but eerily intact. The stitched name patch stopped Eli cold. Property of Benjamin Kessler, Harrow Creek Elementary. That name hadn't crossed anyone's lips in over 30 years. Eli's hands trembled as he opened the zipper, as if the truth inside could reach out and drag him into the past. Inside were 2 things. A stack of Polaroids, some blurred into abstraction, others starkly clear, showing children in a school bus aisle. Their expressions were mixed: confusion, unease, and, in some frames, quiet fear. Then there was the cassette tape, labeled in shaky blue ink. Stop number 13. Play me. That January morning in 1987 had started like any other in rural Pennsylvania. Gray skies, a biting wind, and roads lined with frost. Bus number 37 departed its garage at exactly 6:15 a.m., its engine growling with the reluctant life of old machinery. The driver, Earl Brenner, 58, was a quiet man, 20 years on the same route. He never waved, never smiled. He simply drove. That day, 12 children, ages 9 to 13, climbed aboard, bundled in coats, chatting about homework and weekend plans, unaware they were stepping into legend. The last known witness was Walter Riggs, a local farmer who always waved at the bus as it passed his silo at sunrise. He remembered clearly. The bus came at 6:47 a.m., turned west onto Back Loop Road, and vanished. No one ever saw it again. By 7:08 a.m., teachers noted absence. By 9:10 a.m., 2 patrol cars were dispatched, and yet no bus, no skid marks, no bodies. Just a void where 12 lives used to be. In the present, Detective Callie Hartman stood beneath flickering fluorescent lights in the Harrow Creek Precinct's cramped conference room. Before her lay a crime board filled with faces frozen in childhood, each smiling photo now a cruel echo of a life paused mid-sentence. Her fingers hovered above the cracked zipper of the preserved backpack. "How the hell did this end up 30 miles off route?" she muttered, barely above a whisper. The case had haunted Callie her entire life. She was 10 when the children vanished. One of them, Riley Spear, sat beside her in Sunday school. She still kept one of his hand-drawn stick figure notes in her Bible. Her father, Sheriff Alan Hartman, had led the original investigation until his retirement in 2005. He died still believing the town had failed those kids. The evidence now sat sealed in clear bags: the Polaroids, the cassette, the red backpack. "The tape's digitized," said Officer Marisol Dunn, holding up a tablet. "We found a tech with a working player in his garage." Callie nodded, jaw clenched. The audio began with static. Then a voice, small, scared, cut through. "It's Ben. If someone finds this, I hope it's someone good. The bus didn't stop. We passed my house. Stop number 13. He said we're going to the farmhouse, but I don't think this is a field trip. Please don't let my mom think I ran away." The recording ended with a sharp click. Silence followed. Callie's pulse thundered in her ears. It hadn't been an accident. The driver had chosen not to stop. Her fingers moved with purpose now, arranging name tags on the caseboard like sacred relics. Benjamin Kessler, Riley Spear, Tasha, Marcus, Whitney, Trevor, Emily, Harper, Devin, Tyson, Layla, Caleb. All of them gone, all of them still missing. And then, something else. Hidden in the backpack's front pocket, an envelope. On the back, hand-drawn in fading pencil, number 13. Inside, 6 photographs. They weren't just images, they were pieces of a secret so dark it had taken nearly 40 years to crack its surface. A revelation was coming, one that would force this quiet Pennsylvania town to reckon with what it buried and who it left behind. All 6 photographs told a story without words, one that made Callie's breath catch in her throat. They were taken from the back of the school bus, right where the emergency exit would be. In the first image, the children were laughing, carefree, some even mid-giggle, faces turned toward one another like any normal morning. But with each frame, the tone darkened. By the final photo, every child was sitting perfectly still, hands on their laps, faces turned forward in eerie synchronicity. They were all staring at something or someone, just outside the frame. There was no driver visible. Instead, standing at the front of the bus was a shadowed figure, blurry and shrouded in darkness, its features completely indiscernible. But it wasn't Earl Brenner. That much was clear. On March the 6th, 2024, the farmhouse loomed silent at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by winter-barren trees and the crumbling skeleton of a barn. To the public, it was just another forgotten property, Parcel 41B, recently purchased by a Portland investor with dreams of turning it into a quaint bed and breakfast. Now it was something else, a crime scene tethered to the whispers of the past. Detective Callie Hartman stood at the porch, her coat zipped to the chin as icy wind lashed her cheeks. The house looked more broken in person. Paint peeled from its clapboard siding like old skin. The porch creaked with age and secrets. One window was boarded up, like the house was trying to hide its own shame. "This place gives me the creeps," Officer Dunn murmured beside her. "Like one of those dream photos you can't remember taking." "Did CSU finish the cavity sweep?" Callie asked, her eyes still scanning the house. "Yeah, they wrapped an hour ago. Nothing else but some insulation and a bird skeleton," Dunn replied. But the cavity had fresh screws. Drywall was newer than the rest. Someone reopened it. "Corrosion on the screws puts it after the 90s, she added. "Maybe even early 2000s. Callie ducked under the yellow crime tape and stepped into the shadows of the house. The smell was immediate. Dust, mildew, something chemical that clung to the sinuses. The room where the backpack had been hidden was empty. Empty, except for one thing. A child's crayon drawing, taped to the wall in a crooked tilt. She stepped closer. The picture showed a yellow bus on a winding dirt road. Behind it stood a red-roofed house with 3 windows. In the yard, a row of stick-figure children with blank, expressionless faces. Above them, the sky wasn't blue. It was filled with swirling black spirals. And in the top corner stood something else, a tall stick figure, isolated with no eyes, just one word written beside it: him. Benjamin Kessler had always been described as quiet and polite. Good grades. A sweet kid. His mother worked at the post office. His father had been a pastor who died in a car crash 2 years before Benjamin vanished. His disappearance had shattered her. Now his drawing was here, hidden like a secret waiting to be remembered. "Think this is his?" Dunn asked, snapping a photo. Callie nodded. "Matches the ones in his school folder. I saw one last night in the archive box. Same hand, same strokes." Dunn leaned in, pointing to faint outlines behind the wall's seam. "See this? Someone painted over something. Looks like handprints. Get a UV wand in here." As CSU continued their forensic sweep, Callie left for the Harrow Creek Historical Society, a dusty archive of forgotten stories. She combed through ledgers and property records until she found what she needed: the full history of Parcel 41B. The Ryance family had once owned it, farmers who later became landlords. The last recorded tenant was a man named Harold Wright, who moved in around 1992 and vanished without a trace in 1995. No job, no forwarding address. But it was a pencil note in the margin beside 1987 that made Callie's blood run cold. Suspicious activity reported near barn. Fire pit found. Neighbors heard screaming. No action taken. Sheriff A. Hartman notified. Her father. He'd never mentioned it. Back at the precinct, Callie laid out the contents of evidence box 87-13. It was clear now. The original investigation had been rushed. Desperate. There were no witnesses, no leads. The FBI had stayed briefly, then left when it seemed like a local case. But it wasn't just a missing persons file. It was a failure of memory, of trust. Buried deep in the files, she found something she'd missed before, a spiral notebook. It was filled with notes from routine school counselor interviews conducted just weeks before the disappearance. One line under Benjamin Kessler stopped her cold. December 12th, 1986. Benjamin said, "I like Thursdays best. That's when we go to the Red House." When asked to clarify, he went quiet. Then whispered, "It's our special stop, but we're not supposed to tell." That night, Callie lay awake, the city breathing beneath her window. Sirens came and went like whispers. Her mind wouldn't let go. Stop number 13. The Red House, the missing driver, the faceless figure. She opened the manila envelope of crime scene photos. One Polaroid stood out now. She hadn't noticed it before, but in the far background, drawn in black marker on the bus window, was a spiral. Overlapping, messy, identical to the ones in Benjamin's drawing. The next morning, Callie drove to Harrow Creek Elementary. The school had changed, its original buildings replaced, but history clung to the edges. She asked for yearbooks from 1986 and 1987. "Careful," the secretary warned. "Some pages are damaged." She flipped through them until she found the transportation staff section. Year after year, the same name, Earl Brenner. Except in 1983 and 1982, no photo, just a blank space. Odd, but not alarming. Then she turned to a candid cafeteria photo from 1986. In the background sat several of the missing children, huddled at a table, and next to them was a man in a gray jacket. He wasn't a teacher. He wasn't Earl Brenner. But he was holding something unmistakable, a school bus keychain. On March 7th, 2024, Callie stared at the photo, her eyes refusing to blink. The man wasn't the focus. He was background noise, but her gut screamed. He was part of the story. Somehow, he had always been part of it. All 6 photographs told a story without words, one that made Callie's breath catch in her throat. They were taken from the back of the school bus, right where the emergency exit would be. In the first image, the children were laughing, carefree, some even mid-giggle. Faces turned toward one another like any normal morning. But with each frame, the tone darkened. By the final photo, every child was sitting perfectly still, hands on their laps, faces turned forward in eerie synchronicity. They were all staring at something, or someone, just outside the frame. There was no driver visible. Instead, standing at the front of the bus was a shadowed figure, blurry and shrouded in darkness, its features completely indiscernible. But it wasn't Earl Brenner. That much was clear. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. The man in the cafeteria photo sat slouched at the far end of a lunch table, square jaw, long nose, thinning hair combed neatly back. His eyes were fixed on the children, unblinking, his hands folded in front of him. A thick silver ring sat on one finger, etched with a black spiral. He wasn't labeled in the yearbook. He wasn't faculty. And he wasn't Earl Brenner. Callie flipped the page, praying for another angle. Nothing. Whoever this man was, he'd slipped through the cracks. "Done," she muttered, snapping a photo with her phone. "I need this scanned and enhanced. Focus on the man in the cafeteria photo. Copy that. Want it run through facial recognition." "Do it!" She hung up, heart hammering. 37 years. If this man had access to that bus, if he was the one Benjamin spoke of on the tape, then he'd lived in the shadows for decades. And worse, he may have continued his work. Her next lead took her to the Harrow Creek Bus Depot, a place wrapped in the haze of diesel and memories. The depot manager, Cliff Niss, had worked there since 1980. Callie showed him the cafeteria photo. Cliff squinted. "That ain't Earl. I can tell you that right now. Do you recognize him?" Cliff rubbed his stubbled chin. "No name comes to mind, but that ring. Yeah, I remember that damn spiral. Creeped me out." "You saw him here?" "Couple times in '86. Came in with one of the maintenance guys, Ken something. Said he was helping install a second backup radio in Bus 37. Weird, since we never used two radios in those old Fords. Said it was a district request. There's no record of that in the logs." "Wouldn't surprise me," Cliff muttered. "Back then, our supervisor was Lyle Heeler, retired in '89. He signed off on things that didn't always make sense. Do you have a photo of him?" Cliff pointed to a wall of portraits. "Second row, middle." Callie's blood ran cold. There he was, the man from the yearbook photo. Only now in a suit, faintly smiling, still wearing that silver spiral ring. Back at the precinct, facial recognition confirmed it. Lyle Hiller, deceased, 2004. Heart attack at 63. Unquestionable now, but not beyond scrutiny. Officer Dunn returned with Heller's personnel file, employment history, union records, tax forms, and buried at the back, one disciplinary note dated 1981. A school principal had raised concerns about Heller allowing unauthorized individuals on district property after hours. It involved a school bus being moved without dispatch notice. Heller claimed it was a mechanical test. No follow-up was recorded. Callie circled the phrase, unauthorized individuals. This wasn't just one man. It was bigger, coordinated, systemic. That night she drove to the Kessler residence. Miriam Kessler, Benjamin's mother, still lived in the red brick ranch on Pine Tree Lane. Her hair was silver, her bun neat, her eyes still sharp. When Callie knocked, she opened the door without hesitation. "I heard," she said softly, "about the backpack. I'd like to talk about Benjamin. Anything you remember." Miriam nodded and stepped aside. Inside, the living room felt frozen in time. Family photos, plastic-covered cushions, a smell of lemon oil and tea. "He was quiet," Miriam began. "Always drawing. He missed his father terribly. Sometimes he'd say odd things." "Like what?" "He didn't like Thursdays. Said they made his stomach hurt. I thought it was school. Told him not to worry. But he started faking sick every Thursday. He said if he didn't get on the bus, he'd be safe." "Did he say why?" Miriam looked down at her hands. "Once, he said, because the man with the ring will be driving." Callie's breath caught. Miriam reached for a keepsake box on the coffee table. Inside was another crayon drawing. A school bus on a bridge. Below, water filled with faces. In the driver's seat, stick figure spiral ring. Back at the precinct, a technician met her at the door. "You'll want to see this. We enhanced the Polaroids, adjusted exposure. One image stood out." It showed the bus aisle. Students sat stiffly. In the mirror above the windshield, a fragment of the driver's face, his hand gripping the wheel. On the ring finger, a thick silver band. The spiral was unmistakable. By March 8th, Callie stood over the county survey map, pen in her mouth, fatigue clinging to her shoulders. The precinct was empty. Silence pressed in like a storm. She traced the 1987 bus route in blue. Start point, 12 stops. Final destination, Harrow Creek Elementary. A simple loop. Then in red, she marked the path Walter Riggs claimed to see the bus take. Westbound, past stop 12, toward the woods. In green, she added the farmhouse, 30 miles southwest, completely off route. The lines didn't connect, unless the bus had deviated intentionally, unless someone had known the back roads. She pulled out a 1985 topographic map. There it was. A faint dotted line. A private easement through old farmland, long forgotten. It connected stop 12 directly to parcel 41B. The next morning, Callie met Dunn at the path's edge. A rusted barbed wire gate blocked the trail, swallowed by underbrush. No GPS, Dunn muttered, checking her phone. No name on maps after 1991. They pressed on. Within minutes, they found old tire tracks, faint but real. A narrow gauge, perfect for a 1980s school bus. Farther down, the trail opened to a moss-ringed clearing. At the center, a rotted wood platform, boards warped with time. "What the hell is this?" Dunn whispered. Callie bent down. Something metal poked from the leaf litter, a rusted plaque. She wiped it clean, a spiral carved deep. Not decoration, a symbol. Beneath it, "The returning is the removal." Dunn stepped back. "That's culty." "Because it is." They returned with photos and samples. CSU would excavate later. For now, Callie needed names. She pulled employee records from 1980 to 1990. Drivers, mechanics, substitutes. 5 names stood out, all temporary fill-ins, all connected to Lyle Heller. 3 had criminal records. 1 had a sealed juvenile file. The 5th, Gerald M. Denton. Deceased, 1992. Suicide. But Callie knew the name. She found her father's old field report. In the margins, Denton replaced Brenner for 3 weeks in late 86. No photo. 3 weeks. Just long enough. She checked school counselor notes again. 1 line from Emily Shore, dated January 3, 1987. Emily says she likes the new driver. He sings on the back roads. Tells them not to tell Mr. Brenner about the secret stop. The counselor dismissed it as a game. It wasn't a game. That afternoon, CSU called. One of the Polaroids from Benjamin's backpack had revealed something after digitization. A double exposure. 2 images overlapped. One of the bus aisle. The other, a shadowy, weathered image of an old stone well. Callie stared at the image on her screen, heart pounding as she tried to make sense of the layers. In the foreground were the blurred faces of children, their expressions frozen mid-turn. But it was the background that gripped her, the unmistakable silhouette of a stone well. It had a wooden cap and a chain crank, the kind you'd find in storybooks. From one of the weathered posts, a bright pink ribbon fluttered like a forgotten warning. "You recognize it?" Dunn asked from behind. Callie nodded slowly. "There's an old well like that on the edge of the Rylands property. My dad took me there once when I was little. After a drought, it was capped off. But he always said—" Her voice trailed into a whisper. "He said not to go near it, because it wasn't a well anymore. It was a pit." They arrived just before sunset. The land behind the farmhouse was uneven, the soil fractured, as if remembering. Towering trees loomed above them, branches skeletal, creaking in the wind like breath. The well was still there, 50 yards behind the house. Circular stone perimeter, capped with aging wood, chained shut and rusted over. But the pink ribbon was gone. Callie moved around its perimeter, flashlight cutting through shadows. "Over here," she called. On the backside of the well cap, hidden from the casual eye, was a spiral, etched into the wood with care. Next to it, a date, January 12, 1987, the day the children vanished. They pried open the cap. A shaft descended into pitch. CSU would need ropes, drones, and patience. But Callie already knew. They had found where it began, or maybe where it ended. As she stepped back, her boot knocked loose a small glass jar tucked between the stones. Inside it, curled like a secret, was yellowed notebook paper. She retrieved it with tweezers. 12 names, all 12 missing children. Each name bore a hand-drawn spiral beside it. Except one, Benjamin Kessler. His name had a single arrow pointing upward. March 9, 2024. The glass jar now sat under a forensic lamp, haloed in sterile light. Soil and sweat still clung to its surface, but it was the paper that held their breath. Benjamin's name stood alone. No spiral, just an arrow, upper, a survivor, or an escapee. Callie paced the lab while CSU documented the shaft behind the farmhouse. It ran deeper than expected, over 40 feet, with murky water pooled at the bottom and strange ledges built into its sides. But it wasn't what was at the bottom that mattered. It was what was found halfway down. Embedded into the wall, 20 feet deep, was a crumbling cardboard lunch tray, still sealed in a clear plastic bag from an 1880s convenience store. Inside, a decomposed peanut butter sandwich and a pink unicorn keychain, melted and warped. "I ran the inventory," said Officer Dunn, entering. "That keychain belonged to Emily Shore. Her mom described it in the original statement, said it was her daughter's favorite thing in the world." Callie's throat tightened. She was on that bus. Dunn nodded. "No doubt." The next break came from an unlikely place, a psychiatric hospital, 2 counties away. Willow Pines Adolescent Center, shut down in 2001. Dunn had tracked down a 1994 intake file. The patient had been found wandering barefoot on a rural road in Ohio. No name, mute, wearing children's clothing that didn't fit. The doctors called her Jane Doe, 21. She bore a spiral scar on her shoulder, as if burned. She remained institutionalized until her 18th birthday, then disappeared. Her intake photo had been digitized by the state in 2009. When Callie saw it, her lungs emptied. The girl, around 16, had changed. Her hair darkened, face matured, but the eyes, unmistakable. Whitney Dane, one of the 12. March 10th, Cleveland. Callie found her. Whitney, now living as Maya Ree, was 39. No record, no family. She cleaned offices at night, quiet, invisible. When Callie knocked, the door cracked open, eyes wary. "Who are you?" Callie held her badge up. "Detective Callie Hartman. I'm not here to hurt you. I want to ask about 1987, about Harrow Creek." Whitney flinched. Her hand tightened on the door. "I don't talk about that." Callie took a breath. "We found Benjamin Kessler's backpack. Inside were drawings, Polaroids, and a list. Your name was there. We also found your unicorn keychain in a well, 40 feet deep." Whitney's face drained of color. She didn't cry. She just nodded, slowly. "Come in," she whispered. Her apartment was stripped to the bone. Mattress on the floor, no photos, 1 shelf of old books. She sat on the edge, fidgeting. "I was 12, she said. "It was supposed to be a normal day. I got on the bus, but Earl wasn't driving. It was a substitute, tall guy, smelled like cologne and sawdust, wore a ring with a black swirl. He smiled the whole ride." Callie listened, heart heavy. "He told us school was canceled, that we'd been chosen for something different." Tasha cried. Marcus tried to get off, but the doors locked. After stop 12, we turned. A road I didn't know. Then, the woods. "What happened at the house?" Callie asked. Whitney stared. "They split us up, not all at once. First Tyson and Illa, said they were ready. We never saw them again. Then Harper, then Trevor." Callie leaned forward. "Benjamin." "He got away. One night there was a fire. One of the men, Matthew, left a door unlocked. Ben ran. No screams, just gone. I think they chased him, but he was fast. After that, they kept us tighter. No lights, no windows, just the basement." Callie pulled out a photo. The spiral ring. Whitney recoiled. "Lyle, that was Lyle. They called him Father Heller, but he wasn't a priest. He was the transportation supervisor. He said we were chosen to be unwoven. I still don't know what that means. He said the same thing again and again." Callie whispered it with her. "The returning is the removal." Whitney stared. "How do you know that?" Callie handed her a printed photo. The notebook page, 12 names, Benjamins with an arrow. Whitney's hands shook. "He made this. He told me. He wasn't going down with the rest of us." March 11th, Harrow Creek. By dawn, the well was surrounded by tape, floodlights, and CSU. A pulley rig creaked as Camille Ortiz, A forensic diver descended into the dark mouth beneath the farmhouse. What waited below, no one could have imagined. What Camille found at the bottom of the well would never make the morning papers. 27 feet down, just above the waterline, wedged between compacted earth and rotted timbers, was a human femur. By the time she surfaced, the count had risen. 4 long bones, a handful of partial ribs, and 1 small, decomposed shoe, child-sized. Back on the farmhouse porch, Detective Callie Hartman watched CSU place evidence markers into the cold ground, one by one, like gravestones being born. Her mind reeled with the weight of Whitney Dane's interview the night before. 2 straight hours of unraveling trauma. But even then, Whitney hadn't told everything. Couldn't tell everything. Still, one detail haunted Callie. There had been a door in the basement, not to the outside, to underneath. They called it the spiral room. CSU returned with drills, crowbars, and a floor scanner. Within the hour, they'd uncovered it. Tucked behind the furnace wall, hidden under layers of plywood and insulation, was a sealed trap door bolted from above. The hinges were corroded, but the wood was solid, as though someone had built it not to be opened again. It took 2 crowbars and 30 sweat-drenched minutes to pry it loose. What lay beneath was a steep stairwell. No railing, just wooden steps leading into darkness. The walls were lined with black felt, nailed tightly in place. It felt like descending into a forgotten theater set. Callie descended first. Her flashlight panned across a windowless room. The air was heavy, stale, thick with mildew and memory. On the walls, faded pink flower murals, likely once cheerful, now grotesque. Dolls lined the perimeter, some store-bought, some clearly handmade, and others partially melted like wax figures. A mattress lay rotting in the center, mold eating at its fabric. But it was the spirals that struck her. They were everywhere, drawn in marker, scratched into the wood, burned into the floorboards. Callie counted them. 1 spiral for each child. 12. In the back, inside a rusted cabinet, CSU found a stack of labeled VHS tapes, each handwritten in chilling clarity. Unwoven Session 1, Unwoven Session 2, Whitney Compliance Test, Trevor and Isla Pre-Removal, Father Heller, Intro Tape, Master Copy. Callie couldn't breathe. The spiral wasn't just a symbol. It was doctrine, ritual, a belief system weaponized. The tapes were locked into a secure room at the precinct. Dunn and 2 technicians prepped a viewing station. CSU arranged for trauma counselors. Standard protocol. But Callie chose 1 tape to view alone. Benjamin, Defiance Tape. Recorded January 11th, 1987. The night before the bus vanished. Static. A black screen. Then, dim light revealed a small room. Benjamin sat cross-legged on the floor, shoulders curled inward. His eyes looked swollen from crying. Off camera, a voice. "Tell them why you're refusing the spiral." Benjamin didn't look up. His voice was barely a whisper. "Because it's not real." "What is real, Benjamin?" "My mom, school, outside." "The outside has already been removed. You're the last. Your name will seal the pattern." Benjamin shook his head. "You can't make me draw it." Silence. Then footsteps. A hand entered the frame. The spiral ring unmistakable. The voice again, colder now. "Then tomorrow, you'll be removed with the others." The tape ended. Callie sat in silence, her reflection staring back from the dark screen. Benjamin had resisted. And somehow, he had escaped. The only one. By nightfall, the remains from the well had been catalogued. 4 distinct bone sets. Preliminary assessments confirmed at least 3 were children under 13. Names not yet assigned, but Callie knew. These weren't just remains. They were names from the list. Names once whispered and now silenced. At 11:02 p.m., her office phone rang. Whitney. Her voice was calm, but distant. "There's something I never told you," she said. "I lied. I did see Benjamin again. Callie sat up straight. When? The night before the bus came, they brought us to the spiral room, said it was the final removal. But Ben, he stood up. He had something in his hand, a tape recorder. He told Heller he made his own spiral, that it couldn't be broken. What did he mean? Callie asked. Whitney's voice trembled. He said, "Mine goes up." March 12, 2024, Harrow Creek Police Evidence Archive. At 6:14 a.m., Callie stood in the frigid belly of the precinct. Sub-level B. Only 3 people had keys. She was one of them. The archive stretched into shadow. Boxes and envelopes lined the shelves, each tagged with dust and forgotten sorrow. Crimes long buried. Arson, assault. Cold cases sealed by time. She walked to the section marked Archive 80 to 89. At the far end, she found it. Case File 87-13, the original disappearance report for Bus 37, filed by her father in January 1987. She'd read it before, but not like this. She opened the evidence log. 4 items were listed. 1 broken watch, Riley Spear. 1 yellow scarf, Tasha Vez. 1 blood-stained sneaker, Caleb Wick. 1 blank cassette, labeled Field Trip, Play Me. But inside the box, only 3 items remained. The cassette was missing. She checked the envelope twice. Empty. Her heart kicked into overdrive. She pulled the department's pre-digital ledger, a handwritten notebook, page after page of media checkouts. Then she found it. January 22nd, 1987. Cassette 87FT. Temporarily removed by Lieutenant Hartman. Reason, possible child confession. Return status, unlogged. Her father had taken it. He never brought it back. 3 hours later, Callie sat in her father's attic office. The smell of cedar and dust surrounded her like a memory. Boxes still lined the walls. Nothing unpacked since his death. She tore through every drawer. Old uniforms, empty frames, a folded note. Leave it closed, then the gun safe. Beneath a revolver and loose bullets, she found a zippered pouch labeled Personal, Do Not File. She unzipped it. Inside, a black cassette, blue label, familiar handwriting. Stop number 13, Play Me. Her hands shook. Back at the lab, CSU's tech loaded the cassette into a digitizer. Callie watched as the reel spun. Static. Then a child's voice. "My name is Ben. I'm 11. If this is playing, I didn't make it out." The tech froze. Benjamin continued. "They're taking us to the Red House again. Not school. It's Thursday. The man with the ring said we're ready for the unweaving, but I think they're lying." His voice wavered, but he pressed on. "If they say I drew the spiral, it's not true. Mine goes up. It's not a circle. It doesn't trap you." More static. A whisper. Off mic, someone said, "Ben, they're calling you." He didn't stop. "If anyone hears this, check under the floor in the basement. They hide things there. And there's another house. Not the farmhouse, a different one. The real place where they took pictures." Click. The tape ended. Callie rewound it, mind spinning. They'd already found the spiral room beneath the farmhouse, but not a second house. She pulled topo maps, cross-referenced property deeds. And there it was. A parcel purchased in 1986 by Winding Path Youth Ministry. Never developed. Officially closed due to zoning failure. But something had been built. A private structure, hidden behind a dead-end logging trail, 17 miles west of the farmhouse. Locals never talked about it. Callie circled the location. Not the farmhouse, Benjamin had said. The real place where they took pictures. 3 hours later, Callie Dunn and a search team stood at the edge of an overgrown gravel path, staring into the woods. What they would find next might finally expose the last layer of a story buried for decades. There was no mailbox, no sign. Just a set of tire-worn ruts leading into the silence of pine and shadow. The road wound through the trees for half a mile until it opened into a small clearing. At the center, crouched low and half swallowed by earth and ivy, stood a concrete structure. No windows. One rusted steel door. It looked like a bomb shelter, or worse, something built to keep things in. Above the entrance, a sign had been blacked out with thick paint, but beneath the smears, faint letters bled through. Sanctum 13. The air outside stung with mildew and metal. CSU cut the padlock with bolt cutters. Inside was a narrow descending ramp, the concrete walls lined with rusted carts, ancient electrical outlets, and the stale breath of abandonment. At the bottom, the hallway widened into a large chamber, a camera room, tripods, tape reels, VHS players, stacks of binders. Callie's stomach turned. The labels read like instructions. Whitney, obedience. Tasha, stage 2. Benjamin, resistance tapes, do not copy. Every inch of wall space was defaced with spirals, some drawn in pencil, some burned in, but one section had been scrubbed clean, smeared with black spray paint. Callie leaned in, flashlight catching the faded texture. Through the haze, a final message shone in red crayon. Mine goes up. Ben. By evening, Sanctum 13 was surrounded by floodlights and agents. The FBI had arrived, but Detective Callie Hartman remained below, moving deeper into the heart of the concrete tomb. 3 more rooms were uncovered: a recording suite, a storage vault, and a small, windowless cell painted entirely in soft pink. The air tasted of mold and regret. A rotted mattress curled in one corner. Across one wall, dozens of tiny handprints, repeating, pacing, marked a child's spiral descent. Between them, scrawled in red pencil, "The spiral isn't the end. It's the door." Callie stepped back. This wasn't just psychological manipulation. It was indoctrination. Children had been taught to see the spiral as transformation, as a sacred path. Some believed, others complied. But Benjamin had rebelled. In the storage vault, CSU began cataloging hundreds of tapes, labeled bins stuffed with milk crates and index cards. The earliest dated back to 1983, and they weren't just from Harrow Creek. Other towns, other districts. Each card followed a format: name, age, entry date, progression, stage 1 to 4, removal. Status: complete, incomplete, failed, lost. Dozens were marked lost. Jesus, Dunn whispered. This wasn't about Bus 37, it's national. Callie combed the names. Then she found him. Kessler, Benjamin, age 11. Entry date, December 4th, 1986. Removal status: incomplete. Last note: escape during final purification. Recovery unsuccessful. Subject may have evidence. She flipped the card. On the back, a grainy surveillance photo. A boy's silhouette sprinting through a pine thicket, flashlight beam missing him by inches. That image seared itself into Callie's mind. It was Benjamin, running. The FBI brought in servers to digitize the entire library. Callie passed the task to CSU. She couldn't watch another second. But one thought haunted her. Whitney's words. He had something in his hand, a tape recorder. He said, "Mine goes up." So she returned to the archive. In the back, on a private shelf labeled "Do Not File," CSU found a locked steel box. Stenciled across the top, a spiral, crossed out. They popped the latch. Inside, 7 unlabeled tapes. Callie selected one and fed it into the deck. The video flickered to life. A boy sat at a table, clean walls, sunlight through a window. Benjamin. He looked into the camera. "This is my room. They don't know I'm taping. I made this because if I don't make it, maybe someone will." He leaned forward. "The spiral only works if you believe in it. That's what they told us. But I didn't. I made my own version. It's like a ladder. It doesn't trap you, it lifts you." Benjamin lifted the camera, walked across the room, and pointed it down. Beneath a rug, a chalk drawing, a spiral, reversed, clockwise, with an arrow at the edge. "Mine goes up," he whispered. "If you follow it, you don't become one of them." The screen cut to static. Then a final image, a notebook drawing. 12 stick figures. 11 had spirals for heads. 1 did not. Benjamin hadn't just escaped. He had planned it. Left clues. A trail of resistance. At 11:52 p.m., Callie got the call. CSU officer Jod Lynn. "We found something under the farmhouse, bigger than we expected." "How big?" "We broke through a soft patch beneath the spiral room. There's a second level. Could have been a root cellar, but it's not." "What is it?" "Shelves, but not for food." Callie rushed to the site. Floodlights lit a 10-foot deep tunnel beneath the spiral room. A cavern. Cold. The walls carved with handmade shelves, each one holding dozens of photo frames. Callie lifted one. A class photo. Harrow Creek Elementary, 1984. Every child's face scratched out, except one. A different child in each. In the back, beneath a rusted lamp, sat a wooden desk. On it, a box of Polaroids. She opened the lid. Her breath caught. Photos dated after 1987. Same bus, different children, same blurry figure, same spiral ring. March 13, 2024, Harrow Creek. By sunrise, the cellar had been declared a secondary victim archive, a shrine of horror. School photos, hair ribbons, toothbrushes, stickers, even baby teeth kept in a rusted mint tin labeled Angel Donations. This wasn't just abuse. It was ritualized. Worshipped. Callie hadn't slept. She stood in the media lab, surrounded by digital files, case reports, and a growing list of names. The FBI and NCMEC had linked 31 children so far, but she kept coming back to the original 12. Bus 37. She lined their photos on her desk. One had escaped. Maybe others resisted. But the rest? She needed to know. Later that day, Callie met with Whitney Dane again. This time in the precinct's family interview room. A counselor watched quietly. A cup of coffee steamed on the table, untouched. Whitney sat like someone remembering the end of a dream. Callie spoke gently. "There was another level. Beneath the farmhouse. We found more photos. Other children, other years." Whitney stared ahead. She nodded. Slowly. Then quietly, "There was always more. We just never knew how many or how far it went." And Callie knew. This wasn't the end. It was just the final turn of the spiral before it rose again. Whitney's voice cracked as she recalled. "There were others. Not from our group. They never spoke to us. We were always separated. But at night, we heard things. Crying, humming. Once, I think I heard a lullaby." Callie leaned forward. "What about your group?" "The 12. Whitney's eyes flickered. "They picked favorites. Emily, Harper, Illa. They disappeared first. Said they'd been unwoven, that they'd become part of the spiral. We never saw them again. And the rest? They started giving us tests." Whitney continued, voice shrinking. "How long we could sit without blinking. How long we could go without speaking. We had to copy spirals over and over. If you hesitated, you didn't eat." Callie struggled to stay composed. "But Benjamin, he didn't follow the rules. He'd draw his spiral backward. He'd whistle when they told us to be silent." "Did they punish him?" Whitney looked away. "They locked him in the water room." "What's that?" "It was deeper than the outside well, a dry shaft. They said if he wanted to rise above the spiral, he had to go under it. They left him down there overnight." Callie's stomach turned. After that, he changed. Stopped crying, started drawing maps on the walls, places he remembered, where he thought the farmhouse was. And one night, he whispered something to me. "What?" "If I go missing, follow the arrow." Callie opened her folder, pulled out the list from the glass jar by the outside well. 12 names, 11 spirals. One arrow, next to Benjamin Kessler. He hadn't marked himself as gone. He'd left instructions. Later that evening, CSU Officer Lynn called. "Detective Hartman, you need to come back to the farmhouse. We found something else." At the cellar, Lynn pointed to a crack in the eastern wall. "Drafts are coming through. Steady airflow. There's something behind here." They moved the slab. Behind it, a tunnel. Narrow, hand-dug, just wide enough for shoulders. Chalk markings lined the walls. Spirals, arrows. The tunnel curved, almost like a spiral itself, and then opened into a final chamber. A small, circular room. Callie's flashlight hit the far wall. There it was, Benjamin's spiral, reversed, clockwise, an arrow. Beneath it, one word, alone. Callie's throat tightened. Tucked into the dirt, inside a rusted metal lunchbox, was a notebook wrapped in plastic. On the cover, "Ben's book, if I don't make it out." Back at the precinct, Callie opened the book. Pages of handwriting, diagrams, timelines, some scribbled, some neatly, printed. Benjamin had documented everything. Room layouts, camera locations, men's roles. He listed Father Heller, Brother Denton, and one more, Mr. Spear. Callie froze. She flipped back through the pages. "Mr. Spear watches us when Father Heller is gone. He knows Riley. Says they're not related, but they have the same nose. He's always there on Thursdays." On the last page, "If this book is found, tell my mom I didn't quit." I didn't believe the spiral. I drew my own. Mine goes up. P.S. Mr. Spear lives in a greenhouse with a red door. His truck says Eagle Plumbing. Callie shot to her feet. She remembered that truck, still parked 3 blocks from the station. March 14th, 2024. Harrow Creek, Pennsylvania. At 2:17 a.m., Callie sat in her unmarked cruiser, eyes locked on a greenhouse with a red door. Parked outside, a white service truck. Eagle Plumbing. Riley Spear had vanished in 1987. His father, Gregory Spear, had never been interviewed. Claimed he was working out of state. His alibi had never been verified. Now, 37 years later, he was about to be. At 2:32 a.m., 4 squad cars pulled up in silence. Officers approached from both sides. Callie knocked. Once. Firm a light came on. Footsteps. The door creaked open. Gregory Spear. Older, heavier, eyes sunken. "What's going on?" he asked. Callie held up the warrant. "We're here to search the property." Spear blinked, then muttered something, but the team was already moving inside. "Hands where we can see them," an officer instructed. Spear complied, but his face, it wasn't fear. It was resignation. The house was clean, quiet, until they reached the basement. Wood-paneled walls, an old bar, a locked cabinet. Inside it, a silver ring. Worn smooth, the black spiral unmistakable. "Bag it," Callie ordered. Behind it, an old Polaroid. A school bus, empty. Photo taken from the rear seat. Standing at the front, blurred but identifiable, was Gregory Spear. Back upstairs, Callie sat across from him. "Do you remember Benjamin Kessler?" Spear stared at his hands. "You knew his mother. You worked at the school. You were there the week they disappeared." Silence. "You drove bus 37 on Thursdays." Still nothing. She placed the ring and photo on the table. "You stood at stop 13. His eyelid twitched. Just a flicker. But enough. "I want to know what happened to Benjamin." Spear looked up, voice hollow. "You're not going to find him." "Why?" "Because he doesn't exist anymore. Not the way you think." Callie leaned closer. "Tell me what Sanctum 13 was. Tell me what you were." Spear exhaled slowly. "It wasn't a cult. It was a filter. The world doesn't protect kids. It coddles them, teaches them weakness. The spiral was our correction, a system. Start at the edge, strip away the mask. You tortured children." Spear gave a sad smile. "We liberated them. Most couldn't handle it. But Benjamin, he fought back. And for a moment, I think he almost undid us." At 3:47 a.m., CSU discovered a crawl space beneath Spear's garage. Inside, a metal trunk. Locked. They opened it. Inside, videotapes, a journal, and a wooden unicorn toy burned along the side. Callie sat on the concrete, journal in hand. Benjamin's handwriting lined every margin. He hadn't just escaped. He'd built a map. And now, maybe, they could finally follow it all the way to the truth. Dozens of entries, routes, notes, a scrawled map of Harrow Creek. Benjamin had drawn red stars across it, each one tied to something remembered, something from a tape, a whisper from Whitney. The farmhouse, the dry well, the place called Sanctum 13, and finally, a cemetery outside town. Grave number 219, row 6, beneath the spiral. Just after dawn, Callie walked that final stretch of ground. Mist clung to the grass like breath held too long. Grave 219 stood crooked in the thawing soil. No name, no dates. Just a cracked stone etched with a single spiral, and beneath it, one word: returned. She knelt, placed her palm against the cold earth, and felt something hollow. CSU unearthed a small wooden lockbox, buried 2 feet down. It wasn't a coffin. It wasn't a grave. It was a message. The box was laid out carefully on a blue tarp. Callie opened it with slow hands. Inside, a bundle of cassette tapes wrapped in a child's blue scarf, a water-stained notebook. And on top, a photograph, Benjamin. 11. Soft eyes, faint smile. Handwritten on the back. Ben, right before the bus. The tapes were digitized. Benjamin spoke in a whisper, often from hiding. His words sharp, careful. Day 5, underground. I hear them upstairs. They're searching for the spiral, but mine's different, not a trap. I think Whitney's still alive. They took her to the testing room. I saw her shadow move. If I die down here, tell my mom I remember her voice, even now, even if I can't hear it anymore. The last tape was quieter, like the voice was reaching through fog. I buried this where I used to walk with my dad, near the angel statue, grave 219, under the fake one. Don't look for me, but if you do, start at the beginning. The notebook was a survivor's guide, not just for the farmhouse, for everything. Duct rotes, hidden crawl spaces, camera blind spots, spiral codes, coordinates. CSU analysts were still working to decrypt the final entries. But on the inside cover, Benjamin had written one last message. If this notebook is found, it means I died before the others. But I didn't spiral. I climbed. Ben. That same morning, Callie sat with Whitney Dane. They played Benjamin's tapes together. By the third recording, Whitney was crying, not sobbing, but steady tears, her hands clenched. I thought he was dead, she whispered. Callie nodded. We still don't know for sure. I do, Whitney said. I heard them say it. The one who wouldn't spiral has been returned. Returned where? Whitney shook her head, then whispered something else. There was another bus. That afternoon, Callie requested Pennsylvania's bus records from 1987. Bus 37 was there, last registered to Harrow Creek Elementary. But there was another entry. Bus 49, purchased by Winding Path Youth Ministry 2 days before the disappearances. Registered under religious exemption, removed from state rolls. It had never been found. Until now. At 5:18 p.m., a retired farmer just outside Harrow Creek called 911. He'd been clearing brush when his backhoe struck something metal. Callie arrived 40 minutes later. Under layers of pine and rot, CSU uncovered the second bus. Number 49, rusted, windows shattered. Inside, broken seats, bloodstains, scorched wood, and drawn in ash across the rear wall, a spiral. Over it, scratched deep into the metal. Not this time. By nightfall, the FBI had reclassified the case. This wasn't one abduction or one cult. It was a pattern, a network, and the spiral was no longer just a symbol. It was a warning. Callie sat in her car near Harrow Creek Cemetery. Dusk blurred the treetops. She held Benjamin's photo again, 11, smiling, not ready for what came. She thought of the arrow he always drew, spirals meant to trap, and one meant to rise. He whispered in the dark to remind the others, "You're not alone. Mine goes up." March 17th, 2024. Gray skies stretched over Harrow Creek like old paper. Church bells rang faintly. It felt like a day for endings, or maybe beginnings. Callie stood beside grave 219. Not a burial, a signal, a declaration. By mid-morning, federal agents executed coordinated warrants across 5 counties. One location, a shuttered photography studio in Butler. Spiral carvings across the walls. Another, a closed daycare in Ohio. Inside, tiny lockers still labeled. One read, Harper. Everywhere the same signs, journals, photos, reels of video, the same doctrine, unweaving, a brutal system to reshape children. But Benjamin had done more than resist. He'd mapped the machine. He gave them the path out. Later that day, CSU revisited Bus 49. Under a scorched vinyl seat, they found a satchel. Taped shut. Inside, a broken compass. A drawing of the farmhouse with an X. And another, 12 stick figures. The last one, blue. A single arrow pointed up, Benjamin. 1 week later, Whitney Dane stood at a press conference beside Callie and the FBI. She didn't smile, didn't wear makeup, just stepped to the microphone. "We weren't runaways, we were taken. They said we were chosen, but really, we were trapped. Benjamin Kessler wasn't just a victim, he was our map out." Days later, 2 more survivors came forward. One from Indiana, one from North Carolina. Both remembered the spiral, the tests, the door with no handle. And both remembered a boy. "He told us we weren't crazy," one said, "that someone out there would follow the arrow." March 25th. Callie stood, again inside the spiral room. The chalk had been scrubbed clean, mostly, but in the back, faint behind the shelves, something remained. Not a spiral. A ladder, 12 rungs. At the top, a stick figure. No spiral head. Just an arrow pointing up. April 14th, 2024. The Harrow Creek Community Center gym. No ceremony could make it whole, but they tried. Folding chairs, flickering candles, restored photographs of the 12th. At the end, Benjamin, the only one smiling. A plaque was unveiled beside the flagpole, in memory of the children of Bus 37, the ones we lost, the one who showed us how to find them. In the front row, Whitney held a cassette tape marked only, "Mine Goes Up." She would never play it again, but she needed to hold it, because Benjamin hadn't just escaped. He left something greater than evidence. He left a shape to follow, a ladder. As the sun dropped behind the old schoolyard, Whitney traced a faint arrow painted on the final bus stripe. She knelt, touched it, and whispered, "Thank you for climbing."